Welcome to another episode of Guitar Chat with attorney Steven Rubin. I'm attorney Steven Rubin, a business nonprofit, a tax attorney in Santa Monica, California. And this, as you might already be aware, is Guitar Chat with attorney Steven Rubin. Let's see, in this episode, my fourth episode, I want to discuss a couple favorite songwriters and performers of mine. But before I do, I just want to kind of touch briefly on what is Guitar Chat. Guitar Chat is a program that I've put together to talk about things, all things guitar and all things guitar related, but we might even deviate beyond that part of the menu into things like astrophysics, baking, and other important subjects like that. There may be a discussion of chocolate and how to make the perfect cappuccino and espresso, something that's become kind of a lifelong effort of mine. But it's nice to have you here with me today. In today's episode of Guitar Chat, we're going to talk about a couple of my favorite songwriters, and performers, but both of whom passed away earlier this year. First one I'd like to mention is Bill Withers, the great Bill Withers. A super favorite of mine. Let me shuffle through all my paperwork here. Let's see. In the Saturday, April 4, LA Times was an obituary for Mr. Bill Withers. Let me give you a little peek at that. Singer's biggest hit was Lean on Me, and it tells us a few things about Bill. I'd like to share them with you, taken from this obituary written by Mr. Douglas Woke. It says, a singer-songwriter, Bill Withers, who came to music late and left it early, but created enduring hits such as Ain't No Sunshine, Lean on Me, and Just the Two of Us, died in Los Angeles from heart complications March 30, according to his family. He was 81. Bill Withers was born on July 4th, 1938. And as he would aptly put it, that makes me very American. He was born in the coal mining town of Slab Fork, West Virginia. I confess I've never been to Slab Fork, West Virginia. He always made a point of emphasizing his working class origins and sympathies. That's very true. Here's a cool thing to know about Bill Withers. In 1971, the independent record label Sussex released Withers' debut album, Just As I Am, on which he was backed by, and this I did not know until I read the obituary, by Stephen Stills, one of the gods of guitar playing and songwriting and rock and roll. Stephen Stills of Crosby, Stills, and Nash fame. He was also backed by members of Booker T and the MGs. On that album, that first album of his, Just As I Am, one of the landmark songs on that record was Grandma's Hands. Grandma's Hands, a sentimental memory with genuine sharp pain, and the cadences of black churches and the gospel songs he'd heard there as a child. That's always been one of my favorite songs. Let me just play a little bit of Grandma's Hands here. Grandma's hands clapped in church on Sunday morning. Grandma's hands, they played a tambourine so well. Grandma's hands used to issue out a warning. She'd say, Billy, don't you run so fast. Might fall on a piece of glass. Might be snakes there in that grass. Grandma's hands. Grandma's hands soothe the local unwed mother. Grandma's hands, they used to ache sometime and swell. Grandma's hands used used to lift her face and tell her, she'd say, baby, grandma understands that you really love that man. Put yourself in Jesus' hand and Ma's hand. Grandma's Hands was included on this great live recording that Bill Withers made called Live at Carnegie Hall. Obviously a live show he recorded in Carnegie Hall, at Carnegie Hall. It was released in 1973. It was recorded in 1972. It was released on April 21st of 1973. In 2015, Rolling Stone magazine ranked Bill Withers Live at Carnegie Hall as 27th on their list of 50 greatest live albums. One of the things I loved about Bill Withers, when you listen to Live at Carnegie Hall, you'll see what I mean, was the stories he would tell about the songs and what they were about, the story behind the song, and the way he communicated so comfortably with the audience in between songs, telling those stories is really unique to Bill Withers. I have, in my time, been to a lot of rock shows and seen a lot of my idols play some incredible music, but most of them don't have much to say between songs other than, thank you, hello, and good night. But Bill Withers was one of those guys that, oh, no. He's gonna kind of draw you into his living room, into his space, and make sure you understand how that song came about, what's really going on, because that is as much a part of the performance and the show and the song as the song itself. And if you listen to Live at Carnegie Hall from end to end, you'll see what I mean. It's just a lot of fun. And you'll see the audience really enjoys it and really appreciates it. So to go back to that LA Times obituary a little bit about Bill Withers, there is a funny story I wanted to pull out of it. Apparently, it said, as the big obit said at the beginning, that he came to music late and he left early after great success, much deserved. It says he didn't release any new music in the last 35 years of his life. He took care of his businesses and other interests, and although his music would be very much, kept alive by other artists and musicians recording his songs, he himself did not release any new albums over the last 35 years of his life. And this is taken from the article here. It's a quote from Bill. He's telling a story that a very famous minister actually called me to find out whether I was dead or not. Withers told Rolling Stone in 2015. I said to him, let me check. That sounds like Bill. Extraordinary musician, extraordinary songwriter, extraordinary storyteller. Really unique that way, and is going to be very much missed, I know, by all of us, by me very much. Let's take another peek at a smiling Bill Withers there. Hey, Bill. There he is. During those earlier times. And now I'd like to segue a little bit into telling you a little bit about another fantastic songwriter and performer that we lost earlier this year, and that is the great, the inimitable John Prine, who died on April 7 of coronavirus complications, sadly. So I want to, the Robert Hilburn, who was one of the great pop and rock music critics for the LA Times, who I guess retired some years ago, or at least stopped writing his pieces for the Times, had this to say about John Prine. I guess they pulled him out of mothballs there because of a special relationship he had with John Prine. Anyway, here's a picture of, well, let me give you let's see if we can get the younger picture of old John here. Here we go. Give me a second here to fold my LA Times. Here we go. Where are you, John? Here he is, playing his beautiful Martin D45 guitar. Look at, there he is. But this is what Robert Hilburn had to say about John Prine. That from his debut album in 1971, John Prine was one of the greatest songwriters America has ever produced. So just let's pause for a moment and let that sink in. And this from one of the, if not the most highly regarded pop and rock music critic that the LA Times has ever had. And to tell you a little more about John, that Robert Hilburn, in writing about John Prine, says that at the time that John Prine, he became aware of him, he writes this in his article. I had only been the paper, meaning the LA Times, the paper's pop music critic for 2 months when my review of Elton John's U.S. club debut at the Troubadour in the summer of 1970 helped launch him into to superstardom, a point noted in the film Rocket Man. Great movie. Seen it multiple times. I went from being just one of the crowd at the Troubadour, where the best new singer-songwriters were showcased every Tuesday night, to someone perceived by the music industry to possess magical powers to jumpstart careers. Mostly, the Elton Review gave me enormous credibility, and I wanted to protect it. And this is cool what he says. I wanted readers to trust me, so I set such high standards for new acts that it took 15 months before I found another new artist whom I felt deserved equal endorsement, equal to Elton John. John Prine was that artist. Apparently the guy that helps discover John Prine, or did discover John Prine, was the great Chris Christopherson, a wonderful songwriter, to say the least, and performer, who had sent Robert Hilburn an advance copy of John Prine's debut album because he wanted Robert to become aware of it. And that's where Robert Hilburn listens and says that his lyrics, his words were magnetizing. And he goes on to say, in a front page Sunday calendar review, I called the folk country album, John Prine's debut album, an instant classic, and freely placed him in the company of Dylan, Bob Dylan, Hank Williams, and many of our other greatest songwriters. And in a minute, I'm gonna play a little bit of a couple John Prine songs, and then I'm gonna finish telling you a few more nuggets out of this article that are just amazing when you hear them about what the giants of music and thought about John Prine. But here's a song called Fish and Whistle. When I first started playing guitar, and in my early career, I had a singing partner. Her name is Kathy, and we formed a little duo called August, and one of the songs we would play was Fish and Whistle by John Prine. Kathy was the one that had turned me on to John Prine. She said, Steve, you got to hear this guy, he's great. And boy, was she right. Here's a little bit of Fish and Whistle.
I've been thinking lately about the people I meet, the car wash on the corner and the hole in the street, the way my ankles hurt with shoes on my feet, and I wonder if I'm gonna see tomorrow. Oh, Father, forgive us for what we must do. You forgive us, we'll forgive you. We'll forgive each other till we both turn blue. Then we'll whistle and go fishing in heaven. But I never dug a trench. I used to buzz my knuckles on a monkey wrench. I go to town to drink, give the girls a pinch, but I don't think they ever even notice me. Father, forgive us for what we must do. You forgive me, we'll forgive you. We'll forgive each other till we both turn blue. Then we'll whistle and go fishing in heaven. A fish and whistle, a whistle and fish. Eat everything you can put on your dish. And when we get through, we'll make a big wish that we'll never have to do this again. Again, again. Father, forgive us for what we must do. You forgive us, we'll forgive you. We'll forgive each other till we both turn blue. Then we'll whistle and go fishing in heaven. Well, that's Fish and Whistle by John Prine. John was born October 10 in Maywood, Illinois. As I mentioned, he was discovered by Chris Christopherson. He was considered the Mark Twain of songwriting, high praise. In 2009, Bob Dylan told the Huffington Post that Prine was one of his favorite songwriters. You don't get higher praise as a songwriter than those words from Bob Dylan. I mean, what can you say more than that? Ditto, same feelings by the great Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash. And ditto, more ditto from Roger Waters, the great bass player and founding member of Pink Floyd. And Roger Waters of Pink Floyd puts John Prine's songwriting in the same category as Neil Young and a guy named John Lennon. Well, in the words of my grandpappy, my grandpa, holy mackerel. Wow. Turning your attention back to the article written by Robert Hilburn, he goes on that there was soon so much acclaim for Prine in the music community and press that he was widely hailed as the new Bob Dylan, the same way Bruce Springsteen would be a few years later. And here's a funny little anecdote. When the three artists, so Dylan, Springsteen, and John Prine met backstage at a Dylan show, Dylan wisecracked about how strange it felt having one new Bob Dylan on his left and another on his right. Wow, the great Bob Dylan. But Dylan was one of John's biggest boosters. He once described him as pure Proust existentialism. Thank you, Bob. In English, please. Within the creative community, in fact, John did become a superstar. This is from the Robert Hilburn article. Acclaimed over the years by John Lennon, Paul Simon, Johnny Cash, Randy Newman, Merle Haggard, Pete Townsend, Elvis Costello, Neil Young, Leonard Cohen, Emmylou Harris, and to complete the circle, Elton John and Bernie Taupin. Wow, I mean, if those guys are telling you you're a good songwriter, I think you're a good songwriter. Wow, that's a holy mackerel. In fact, that's two holy mackerels. So now I want to kind of move towards the end of this episode of Guitar Chat, digging in a little bit to probably my favorite John Prine song, Angel from Montgomery, beautifully and brilliantly covered by the magnificent Bonnie Raitt. And the cool thing about this song, I think one of the cool things, many cool things about it, is it's written from the perspective of a woman. And it just shows one more insight into John Prine's brilliant songwriting chops. So here we go, a little bit of Angel from Montgomery by John Prine. I'm an old woman named after my mother. My old man is another child that's grown old. If dreams were lightning, thunder was desire, this old house would have burned down a long time ago. Make me an angel that flies from Montgomery. Show me a post old rodeo. Just giving me one thing that I can hold on to believe in this living's just a hard way to go. When I was a young girl, I had me a cowboy. He weren't much to look at, just a free rambling man. But that was a long time, and no matter how I tried, the years just flow by like a broken down dam. Make me an angel, flies from Montgomery. Make me a poster of an old rodeo. Just giving me one thing that I can hold on to believe in this living's just a hard way to go. There's flies in the kitchen, I can hear them buzzing, and I ain't done nothing since I woke up today. How the hell can a person go to work in the morning, come home in the evening, and have nothing to say? Make me an angel that flies from Montgomery. Make me a poster of an old rodeo. Just giving me one thing that I can hold on to believe in this living's just a hard way to go. To believe in this living's just a hard way to go. All right, well, that does it for this episode of Guitar Chat with attorney Steven Rubin. Thank you very much for joining me. And thank you, John Prine. Thank you, Bill Withers. You are going to be very, very much missed by so many of us. Thank you for your great music. See you next time.